In this section, we're going to talk about the ways we use documents to make payments or loan money. The use of cash substitute has been around for centuries. Anglo-American law, or the law of merchants, recognized that agreements could be paid for with documents that promised payment, documents that could be circulated as a substitute for money. English King's Court did not accept it at first, so the merchants had to develop a system and rules for using the documents as payment. Using documents as payment can greatly facilitate transactions, especially commercial transactions, especially when cash is short of supply, or it is dangerous to transfer large sums of money, right? Or precious metals. So what is commercial paper? It's a contract to pay money. It is used as a substitute for money. It's also used to loan out money. So we're going to talk about these specifically. For commercial paper to be a substitute for money, it must be payable on demand. So when Joe stops at the local convenience store to pick up a quick lunch but only has $1 in his pocket, he can write a check. Joe's check is a promise that he has the money in the bank. It is also an order to the bank to transfer funds to the local convenience store. Joe is going to eat immediately, and the store is likely to be paid quickly. For a loan of money, this type of commercial paper is a contract to pay what is owed sometime in the future. So let's say that Joe cannot afford tuition to New York University, so he borrows money from the federal government. To obtain a loan, he must sign a promissory note stating that he will repay the money when he leaves college. There are types of commercial paper. We lump them into two categories. We have negotiable instruments and we have non-negotiable instruments. Negotiable instruments are more valuable than non-negotiable instruments because the worth of a non-negotiable instrument depends on the validity of the original contract that created it. A negotiable instrument is valid on its face. We do not need to reference the original contract. The possessor of a non-negotiable instrument has the same rights, no more, no less, as the person who made the original contract. However, the possessor of a negotiable instrument has more rights than a person who made the original contract. Article 3 of the Uniform Commercial Code, or the UCC, governs negotiable instruments. Non-negotiable instruments are governed by ordinary contract law. Types of negotiable instruments. There are two categories. We have drafts and we have notes. The difference is a note is a promise to do something and a draft is an order to someone else to do something. The drafts are orders to pay. Examples, well, actually there's no examples, just two. We have drafts and we have checks, and we'll go into the details of those specifically. For notes, we have a promissory note and we have certificates of deposit. A draft, as I said, is an order directing someone else to pay money for you. Check is the most common form of a draft. A draft written and signed by a drawer ordering the drawee, financial institution, to pay a certain amount of money to the holder on demand. So when you take money out of your account, as we know, the saying is we're drawing on it, right? We're drawing on the account. This is a three-party instrument. We have the writer of the check, who's the drawer. We have the bank, that's the drawee. And we have the check being payable to the payee, the one who gets the money. So it's payable on demand, and that's regardless of post-dating. What's the difference between a cashier check and a certified check? When we have a check that is certified, it's the bank that guarantees, I should say financial institution, because we have credit unions, a financial institution that guarantees that it will honor the check when it's presented. It removes the money from the drawer's account and holds it for payment. the check is stamped certified, and the payee demands payment from the bank, not the drawer. There's a slight distinction when we talk about a cashier's check. It's drawn on the account of the bank itself and is signed by a bank or financial institution representative in return for cash payment from the customer. So if I go into the bank and ask for a cashier's check, they immediately take the money from my account, or I give them cash, and they issue the check. It's payable out of their funds, not my account, their own funds. And as long as the bank is solvent, the check's good. Time drafts and sight drafts. All checks are drafts, but not all drafts are checks. Sometimes drafts are drawn on individuals or companies. A draft is a check only if drawn on a financial institution. So, time draft is payable at a definite time in the future, 90 days from today. A sight draft is payable on sight. That is when it's presented for payment. The drafts can be both a time draft and a sight draft. The example on the slide is actually both. As you can see, it says 90 days after sight. So what has to happen? There has to be a presentment of the check, and then it's payable 90 days out. So this is actually an example of both. A promise to pay. So we have our note, also called a promissory note, used in virtually every loan transaction, whether paying for a multi-million-dollar company, a TV, college tuition. There's going to be a note if you're borrowing money. So unlike a draft or a check, this is a two-party instrument. It's a written promise by one party to pay another party a specific sum. The party who promises to pay, we call the maker, the promisor. They're making the promise. And the party that the promise is made to is the payee or the promisee. They're the one that expects to be paid. Regarding notes, some notes are due at a future date. They can also be for a specific time. They can be payable on demand or paid when asked with so many days notice. There's a little bit more flexibility here. There's two examples of notes on this slide. Now we have our certificate of deposit. This is a note made by a financial institution. It is an acknowledgement by a financial institution of receipt of money and a promise to repay it with interest on a certain date. When investors loan money to a bank, the bank gives them a note promising to repay the loan at a specific date in the future. The maker here is the financial institution, and the payee is the customer or the investor. The bank pays higher rates of interest on CDs than on a regular savings account because the investor cannot demand payment on the CD until they reach the date that's been set. So in return for a lower rate on a savings account, the depositor can withdraw that money at any time. To work as a substitute for currency, commercial paper must be freely transferable in the marketplace, meaning it has to be negotiable. Suppose Joe buys a used car from ABC Auto Lot so that he can drive to school. He cannot afford to pay the full $15,000 right now, but he's willing to sign a note promising to pay later. As long as ABC Auto Lot keeps the note, Joe's obligation to pay is contingent upon the validity of the underlying contract. For instance, the car's defective. Joe might not be liable to Auto Lot for the full amount of the note, if that is the case. However, ABC Auto Lot does not want to keep the note. It needs cash now so that it can buy more cars to sell to other customers. So Reggie's finance company is happy to buy Joe's promissory note from ABC Auto Lot, but the price Reggie is willing to pay is going to depend on whether or not that note is negotiable. Remember I said that the possessor of non-negotiable commercial paper has the same rights, no more, no less, as the person who made the original contract? If ABC Auto Lot sells the non-negotiable note to Reggie's under contract law, we call this an assignment of rights. Reggie obtains the right to receive Joe's payments. If for some reason ABC Lot loses its right to be paid, so will Reggie. Reggie steps into ABC Lot's shoes. The value of the non-negotiable commercial paper is greatly reduced because the transferee, Reggie, cannot be absolutely sure what his rights are and whether or not he'll be paid at all. Suppose ABC Auto Lot misrepresented the condition of the car to Joe or tampered with the odometer, and as a result, Joe's car is worth only $10,000 instead of $15,000 that he paid. Clearly, Joe has some defenses against having to pay that much against ABC Auto Lot because there's a misrepresentation. So under contract law, Joe owes ABC Auto Lot only $10,000. And of course, that would be what he would owe Reggie, even though the note says more, and even if Reggie had paid more for acquiring the note, because Reggie steps in the shoes of ABC Auto Lot when we have an assignment under contract law. The possessor of a negotiable commercial paper has more rights than the person who made the original contract. Here, the rights of a transferee are unconditional and do not depend on any of the rights of the original party to the contract. If Joe's promissory note is a negotiable instrument, he must pay the full amount to whomever has possession of it, no matter what complaints he may have against ABC Auto Lot. Even if the car explodes within a month, Joe must pay Reggie the full $15,000. So the question is, what is a negotiable instrument, or what makes commercial paper negotiable? That's in the next video.